The world runs on order. I love order. I believe in following the rules. Armies need order. They need structure. They need command. They need control. They need plans. They need planning. They need clear boundaries. They need commanders. But October 7th wasn't a day for orders. It wasn't a day for structures. Command chains around Gaza collapsed. Order was gone. It was individual initiative that won that day. People, ordinary people. A father who took two of his brothers with him to help out in any way they could and never returned. A retired general who grabbed a small rifle and ambushed terrorists roaming his own kibbutz. A small squad who fought hours on end, repelling wave after wave after wave of attack. People who went and tried to make a difference. People who went and made a difference. People, friends, who gave their lives. Hastily cobbled together forces who went once more into that breach. Choices made, choices regretted, choices that stemmed the tide. The world runs on order, but sometimes the right choice isn't to fight against the chaos, but to ride the chaos and let chaos reign. But anarchy doesn't last. Order reasserts itself. And October 8th was a brand new day. Welcome to Causality. My name is Sharon Eretz. The news reports the symptoms. We provide the diagnosis. This is the first main episode in Series 2 of our large anthology on the 2 years of war that Israel has faced. This series is about the shift and the shock that happened on October 7th and in the weeks that followed, and how Israel changed itself in order to fight anew. In this episode, we're talking about that line between order and chaos, how order falls, how chaos takes over, and how order reasserts itself. I'm not going to go too much further into the events of October 7th. Truthfully, I don't know how. There is both too much to say and too little to say. Too many acts of heroism, too many failures. I'll leave the stories of that day for another time, perhaps to others. Here I'll be talking about what went on around those events, both starting on that day and in the hours, days, and months that followed. Armies live on order, to coordinate movements of troops, to coordinate missions, to coordinate lethal force. A high degree of order is needed. But that isn't to say that order is ever complete. There is always a balancing act between order and chaos. War is messy. All war is messy. There is always a blur between what is known and what is unknown. The fog of war is real, and it permeates through all different levels in a multitude of different varieties. So plans need to take into account that you do not and will not know everything, and the army is built to work on things that are half known. But following the October 7th attacks, the level of uncertainty was of an order of magnitude higher. No one knew what was happening. No one knew what happened. Snippets of information were filtering out from all around. And this continued for days, and it continued for weeks. One thing was clear, though. This was war. The state declared war and put a full emergency reserve call up. Order 8, Tzav 8. Everyone who had a unit was called, and even those who didn't have a unit came. Coinciding with the attacks of Hamas, there started a huge movement of individuals across Israel, each making its way to its unit. And as the units coalesced, and as the logistic hubs were opened, and as tentative orders were issued from the general staff to the regional commands, to the divisions, to the brigades, and so on, rough lines started to be drawn. Sometimes the orders were clear, sometimes they were less. Sometimes units found everything they needed, sometimes they were left lacking. The logistics actually held up, considering, pretty well, partly because of the lessons learned from 2006 and the Second Lebanese War. Then, reservists found themselves often with missing or torn uniforms, old equipment, worn out equipment. On October 7th, each reserve unit found their depot, their hangar, waiting for them. Each soldier found their own kitted out kit bag with fresh equipment, ready to be used. By and large, this was a huge logistical success. Successfully drafting and equipping and deploying to the front lines 300,000 soldiers in 1 or 2 days. This is a feat unparalleled in history. But there were also vagaries and oddities, a broken seal here leading to deteriorated supplies, or even the simple fact that units never actually expect the full contingent to show up when called. There's always a surplus of soldiers assigned to each company. So when the 80% that actually answer the call comes, you still fill out the ranks. There's always going to be some on vacation, some with personal matters, some who just couldn't come. You need to take that into account when planning unit size. But on October 7th, everyone came. The roads along major bases had lines of cars parked along the side for kilometers in every direction. With that amount of soldiers, suddenly many units had more soldiers and guns. There were other severe bottlenecks that showed themselves. One such bottleneck were the trucks capable of carrying armored vehicles to the front. These were limited, so units had to find sometimes their own way to make it there. This could even mean taking a battalion of tanks down civilian roads. I even remember a couple of weeks into the war, driving at night when a large shadow appeared in front of me. It turned out it was an APC making its slow way in the dark to wherever it was going. There were also 300,000 more mouths to feed, and there was no logistical lead time, so donations from the wider public no longer was a dirty word. The regular lines of logistics were clogged. Each unit, each person had to figure out how to get what they needed in order to fulfill the mission. Because what was clear to everyone was that the mission had to be fulfilled. The shock of October 7th was huge. And so the mission was first and foremost to secure the state, secure the borders, secure the populace. Obviously, around Gaza, this meant both fighting and sweeping operations. But everywhere else, it meant throwing as many soldiers as possible at the problem. Because while we didn't know much, we understood that our defensive posture wasn't enough. So we flooded the zone with reservists, into towns and in between, from the north to the south, to prepare for the next attack, wherever it may come. Conditions could be harsh, but complaints were minimal. How can you complain when an untold number of your compatriots were just massacred, when others were actively being dragged into tunnels? Israel's population is small. The casualties were large, hour by hour. Soldiers would receive a message: a former lover dead, a former student taken, a childhood friend, a former boss, the husband of the clerk who works down the road. While almost all lost someone they knew. It was those in their 20s, the conscripts, who had it worse. So many of the army casualties were conscripts, and the casualties from the music festival were also from that age group. Some lost 10, 20 people who they knew. This is something that I keep in mind whenever I hear someone dismissing that TikTok generation. Because they, like everyone else, had no time to mourn. There were jobs to do. Perhaps only a quick word to a friend, perhaps a sob in the dark. And then you move on. Then there were the videos, the massacres in HD, straight from the GoPros of monsters. Some chose not to look, some couldn't look away. I chose to bear witness one late night in order to never forget. Those are scars that perhaps will not, perhaps should not, ever heal. And so you move on. Out of the chaos comes order. You had 1,000 units looking at 1,000 maps with thousands of fresh eyes. New commands filtered down and new ideas were put forth. It was back to basics. It was throwing out the rulebook, but leaning on your training. It was understanding strategy and tactics and understanding that it's no longer a question of having pre-made plans, but rather to go back to first principles, to establish new defensive lines, to pick up your shovel and spade and to build new defenses, trenches, sandbags. relearning how you fortify a position, a base, a supply line, a border, a country. And in Gaza, it was to draw up new and different types of battle orders. With every hour, clarity grew, little by little. With every hour, ideas grew. With every hour, the standing army plus 300,000 new reserves molded itself anew. There was something for everyone, the more the merrier, and a new order emerged. Israel and its army went from the sleepy order of the night of October 6th to the intense chaos of October 7th, to the slow reforging of a new order based on a new reality of taking nothing for granted and working tirelessly to improve that which is in your power to improve, whether you were told to or not. Sometimes the only way to cross an ocean of chaos and to get back to order is to work with the chaos and not against it. To use the chaos to sweep away that which is no longer relevant, that which perhaps was long overdue for change, to harness its power to reshape reality. I love order. I love rules, but they are made by men to bring order to reality. When reality changes, it is on new men who can make new rules for what is now needed. Again, this is causality. The news reports the symptoms. We provide the diagnosis. If you enjoyed this analysis, like, subscribe, share with friends and family. Until next time, take care.